Admiral Papp, you know, we sit here every day, and it isn't very often our intelligence is insulted. But for you to come here and tell us that we can't resolve a border dispute with Canada because we're not a member of this Law of the Sea Treaty really does that. And I'm sorry that you chose to go down that route, because I think those kinds of representations really undermine the statements and the logical arguments made by others who want to see this treaty authorized. I was surprised, as all of you testified, that the South China Sea wasn't mentioned until we got to Admiral Locklear. I was going to go down the same route that Senator Corker did in that regard, and I guess I'll touch on it at least some. I would say that most people in America don't realize what a mess that the South China Sea is in. And the description that we've had here today has been very antiseptic. I've met with representatives of the governments, and it's not just the Philippines. It's other governments that are having the same kind of difficulties. And they're begging for help. Not one of them asked that we subscribe to the Law of the Sea Treaty. They wanted you guys to do something about it. They wanted me to urge the President to have you do something about it, which I'm not inclined to do, by the way. But Senator Corker made the point that this treaty was negotiated 30 years ago, this coming December 12th. It was adopted by the United Nations a couple of decades ago, and every one of the players in the mess in the South China Sea is a subscriber to this treaty. Yet this treaty is just a piece of paper, and it's just flowery speeches like we've had here today until the gate opens and the rodeo starts. And the gate's opened and the rodeo has started, and this thing hasn't helped one bit to resolve the tension, the disputes, the difficulties that are going on in the South China Sea. They're shooting at each other there. There's been munitions expended. And this thing hasn't done one thing to help, as Senator Corker has pointed out. Can any one of you point to me one thing that this treaty has done on a specific basis, people, places, and a timing? Tell me one thing that this treaty has done to resolve the disputes and the tensions that have taken place in the South China Sea. And I don't want to talk about the future. I don't want to talk about what a wonderful document it is. I want to know, what did one country do to use the provisions of this treaty to help itself in the mess that they're in the South China Sea? Who wants to try that?
Well, you got to show it specifically.
We pointed out, Senator, already that the treaty is not a magical document that's going to cure the ills of the South China Sea. It's yet another tool. And I think that the nations there will feel more empowered to use whatever mechanisms are in, or to insist that the mechanisms in the Law of the Sea Convention be used. If we are a party, we apply our political backing and our political power and our influence to do that. And it might not work. And if that's the case, there are other mechanisms. Why should we leap right away to the use of force or something along that order when we have the opportunity to bring our influence to bear in the region? And the nations in that region will be a lot more comfortable if we're bringing our influence to bear with treaty law behind us than if we're on the outside looking in and with no credibility to be able to having not acceded to the treaty, to make statements about the treaty.
You know, I'm not suggesting that you should jump in with force. I'm not suggesting that at all. Right. What I'm suggesting is this has been an abject failure for the members who've signed this and who've been members for years and years and years. They're coming to us asking for help. Can anybody answer my question? Give me one example of a tension or a difficulty that was resolved as a result of this treaty by the members who operate in the South China Sea. Give me one example. Anybody do that? I'll take that as an answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm done.